Get ready for Netflix's gripping new medical drama, Pulse. Set in a cutting-edge Miami trauma center, third-year resident Dr. Danny Sims is unexpectedly thrust into a promotion when beloved chief resident Dr. Xander Phillips gets suspended. Then, with the emotional and physical stakes at their highest, a storm will push the hospital and its residents to their limits. Witness how life can change in a heartbeat when you're operating under pressure. Watch Pulse April 3rd, only on Netflix.
I can say to my new Samsung Galaxy S25 Ultra, hey, find a keto-friendly restaurant nearby and text it to Beth and Steve. And it does, without me lifting a finger. So I can get in more squats anywhere I can. 1, 2, 3.
Will that be cash or credit?
Credit. 4.
Galaxy S25 Ultra, the AI companion that does the heavy lifting so you can do you. Get yours at Samsung.com. Compatible with select apps. Requires Google Gemini account. Results may vary based on input. Check responses for accuracy.
Hello, Kathy here. We didn't get to the cinema this week, so we are instead sharing this episode from the Patreon vaults from April 2024. We watched Robocop, had a blast, and how it works over on our Patreon is that every month we watch a retro movie. Our listeners select the theme, and then our listeners select what movie we're going to watch. It's really good fun. It's kind of like a book club. We all watch it together and chat about it. So here you go. Here's our Robocop review from last year. Enjoy.
Hi, quick note before we get into this episode. When you hear the trailer for Robocop, you might notice the music is a bit familiar and not from Robocop, because this is apparently true. They used the Terminator soundtrack for the Robocop trailer when they were first marketing it. So we don't address it in the episode because we spoke about it and then I just edited in the trailer. So we're not going to address that weird fact, and I just thought it might be a bit jarring for you all to hear. So I'm flagging it up front. And on with the episode.
Hi patrons.
Hello.
It's us. We're here to talk about Robocop. So this was a fantastic retro movie theme suggestion that came in from Anna Vilcek. Apologies, Anna, if I'm saying your name wrong. Please do correct me. I'm very open to being corrected at all times. So this was movies that you saw when you were too young. Kathy, what's a movie that you saw when you were too young?
Pretty Woman, which was one of the ones.
That was one of them.
Yeah. It springs to mind for me. I was probably less inclined to be watching like action things as a kid, so I wouldn't have watched this.
So what did you think was happening with Pretty Woman?
Oh, I knew what was happening.
Did you know that she was a prostitute?
Yeah.
Because I think I saw that at like 10 or 11 as well, and just thought, I didn't know what she I didn't know what her job
You're like,
was.
what's happening?
I had no idea.
I was probably more worldly than you.
The one that stands out in my mind is one of my favourite films as a kid was Ace Ventura: Pet Detective, which if you watch as a grown-up, you realise is very sexualised. Like
Weird. Is it like weirdly transphobic as well?
It's very transphobic as well. Yes, but the
But that was kind of marketed as a kids' film, though.
Well, kind of, yeah. And
I
then
went to see it in the cinema.
had a kids show.
I saw it in the cinema.
Yeah, but I think it was a 15s, and it was like there's a very like there's a scene at the beginning where you first introduce him and he rescues somebody's dog, and then she just like goes down on him very clearly, and then he's hanging onto the ceiling and going woo, and, all this, and I had no idea what was happening as a child.
Goes over kids'
it does go over your head.
Yeah.
But
anyway, great suggestions on this one. A lot of people were suggesting Robocop.
So many. So yeah, I'm not surprised it won. 35% of you wanted Robocop. The other selections were Tremors, Total Recall, another Verhoeven movie, Pretty Woman, The Mummy, which I was interested in a rewatch. I voted for that. I used our vote. We get one collective vote.
Randomly, we watched Tremors a few weeks ago, so we were like, could it happen that they'd vote for a film that we've just seen? Didn't.
No, 8%. Nobody wants to watch Tremors.
I didn't enjoy it either.
Or the Blair Witch Project.
Blair Witch Project I wanted to win just because I've not seen it since it first came out.
It's a great movie.
So Robocop, we've actually done a podcast review on, but like 8 years ago on Flixwatcher, our friend Kobe and Helen's podcast. But it's so apparently we watched it 8 years ago. I just have to say I don't remember watching it, and I don't remember what we said about it. So
I don't remember what we said
either. I know
either.
the movie, but I can't remember that particular time watching it, and I don't remember what we said. So
I'm very confident that whatever we said, we're about to say again. I don't think our opinions will have changed that much.
I don't think so either, but I can't wait to watch it.
I love this movie. I've seen it a lot.
I've only seen it once or twice.
I didn't see it. You only seen? Yeah. Okay. So that one time with me, and then one
And
other
maybe
time.
another time. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I've seen this so many times. It was a teen favorite of mine. I did not see this too young. I think I thought I saw it just around the right age, maybe 16, 17.
Just about the age when you were thinking about what you wanted to happen to you after you died, and like where you'd like your remains to be donated.
I thought
I'd really like my body to go towards law enforcement when I die. Some people dedicate to science. I'm not one of them.
Well, I'd probably hit a checkbox somewhere when I signed up to something, which means that like
Donate organs.
Apple are going to get my my body. But I don't remember being as horrified as many of you were watching this at age 9.
Yeah.
Age 9, I think.
It's a violent film for memory.
I don't have your comments to hand, but I'll read them out after we've watched the movie. But a lot of you guys saw it. Age 9 in particular was called out.
We've really age checked our elder millennial patrons.
yeah. And I think a few scenes were called out as particularly traumatizing. Murphy's death, the Ed 209 killing the board member in his first demo. Oh, you don't remember any of this? Okay, I won't say anything. Let's go watch the movie, and then we'll come back to you and read out some of your comments, and then say what we thought about the movie.
Bye.
See you soon. Bye.
We get the best of both worlds. The fastest reflexes modern technology has to offer, onboard computer-assisted memory, and a lifetime of on-the-street law enforcement programming. It is my great pleasure to present to you Robocop.
This guy is really good.
He's not a guy, he's a machine.
Old Detroit has a cancer. Cancer is crime.
Let the woman go. You are under arrest.
You better back up, pal!
Your move, creep.
What are your prime directives?
You have the right to remain silent. You have the right to an attorney.
What is this shit?
Anything you say may be used against you.
He's a cyborg, you idiot! He recorded every word you said.
You're dead. We killed you.
His memory's admissible as evidence. You're gonna have to kill it. Get out of the car, for God's sake!
Robocop, the future of law enforcement.
Hi, we're back. We have seen Robocop. And so have many of you, it seems, when you were 9.
This movie is way gorier than I remember.
It's super, super gory.
From a gore perspective, it is not a film for kids.
Yes, and I'll go into the details around that in Fun Facts. Because these were some fun facts to bring together. I got some absolute doozies for you, Kathy.
Thank you, Dave.
But let's first, me and Kathy are going to give you our thoughts and reflections upon this. Yes, Robocop reflections.
I've just really been thinking about Robocop, you know.
Yeah, and
it's really struck a chord.
And then we'll hear from some of you guys. You gave us some great comments. Thank you. And then we'll get into the fun facts. So, Kathy, what do you think of Robocop? Firstly. And what are your reflections? What have you been reflecting upon?
I thoroughly enjoyed watching Robocop. It's one of those films that I guess I watched before for Kobe and Helen's podcast, albeit I don't really remember that. It's one of those films where you're like, oh, I remember this. But then when it comes on, there's a lot more to it than I recalled. I'd forgotten that we kind of know Murphy before he becomes Robocop. Completely forgotten that. I enjoyed getting to know him. You know, he's a really deep character. He has a son and he learns how to spin a gun around for said son.
TJ Laser.
I just love the whole setup. Like, it's so... What year is it?
I don't know if they actually say. Correct us if I'm wrong.
What year was it made?
Oh, 87.
Yeah, it's so 80s.
Yeah.
It's like Wall Street. It's like men being assholes in a boardroom to each other. Like, I generally enjoy all that vibe. Men kind of like outcompete each other in a business sense. The boardroom scene is iconic. Absolutely iconic when that...
Which one?
That robot comes out, the first iteration.
So good. Ed 209.
So from a sci-fi perspective, I love the sci-fi in this. I think it's an absolute cracker. It's dystopian, as all good sci-fi should be. And there was a certain point of the film when I was like, it's getting a bit long now. And then it kind of picked up again at the end. So I think it overstays its welcome just the tiniest bit, but it's so iconic.
What? It's less than 90 minutes.
It's slightly
What are you
overstayed its
talking about?
welcome within that 90 minutes.
I don't agree
and
with you.
I love the 80s bad guys who are always like whooping and hollering and like running around the place and all that kind of stuff. Enjoyed it all.
Yeah, for a film that like really seems to like criticize excess capitalism, consumerism, and Reagan era politics, it also leans into the trend of the 80s of like punks being bad and this kind of thing, and like there's so much gun violence in this film. It's quite shocking how much gun violence is in this film, isn't it? Yes, it's an incredibly violent film, but by design, and we'll talk about that in the
you're really teasing these
in the fun facts, because I'll give you an early one. So
you can't help yourself. You
basically,
haven't even told us what your reflections on the movie are yet.
Fine. Allow me to reflect. Upon Robocop. I've seen this movie a lot. It's a favourite of mine.
Do you ever get sick of it?
I don't remember if I said this in the before, but I think I did. I saw this as a teenager. Firstly. Absolutely loved it. I never get sick of this movie. It's fantastic. It's so good. It is so tight. It is just this brilliant premise and an incredible design. Like one thing that really stood out to me is the suit is incredible. Like as a costume, as the design of it, it is just fantastic. It looks great.
It looks really good.
And
his
when
face is amazing.
When the makeup work that they did in this film, when he takes off his helmet in the second half, full spoilers for Robocop, of course.
Full spoilers. It's a
he
cop
takes off
who
his
becomes
helmet,
a robot.
and the seamless blend between his flesh, his head, and the suit is incredible. The way he moves is great. I'll speak about that later in fun facts. But
presumably
he works with a
heavily
mime.
inspired by Terminator, is all right?
Yes, correct. Well, kind of. I'll go to all that in fun facts.
I mean, aesthetically.
So the things that stood out to me, I had a renewed appreciation for the costume design. The visual effects are varied. They're a mixed bag. You know, there's still that really awful one. I remember going into this with Kobe and Helen, of when Dick Jones gets pushed out the window at the end, and that's a terrible effect. His arms are crazy long. You know, they went with the
love it.
What's his name? Tippert, Phil Tipperts, who is a visual effects master and features heavily on the ILM Light and Magic documentary, which I'd highly recommend. He was the stop motion guy that did all the Ed 209 effects, which for the most part I think look good. The Ed 209 looks good. Mixed bag in terms of VFX. In terms of the sort of themes and subject matter, I think Robocop becomes more prevalent the over the past few decades, the more we go on. Like today it feels even closer to the bone. Like corporations just completely...
It's the AI stuff.
Killing. Yes, exactly.
I think the AI feels too close to the bone now.
Exactly. Like corporations replacing... workers with machines is essentially, and people trying to unionize,
and that's when AI, when sci-fi and good sci-fi, and I really think this is good sci-fi, it kind of mirrors dystopian things happening in your own world.
100%.
And it's kind of prophetic. Like obviously it's ludicrous how they've done it, but it feels like, it looks hokey these days. Like I can't say it all holds up, but like it feels very timely.
But that's what's so good about Paul Verhoeven's work. And in particular, I'm thinking of the trilogy, unofficial trilogy of this, Total Recall, and Starship Troopers.
Oh my God! What a banging trilogy!
But they all present they all present as movies that are over the top, hyper realistic, gory comic book violence that can easily be dismissed as B movies, but have really rich veins of social commentary and like rich in thematic and character stuff. That it's just when you can tap into that, you can it's like so much to explore. And Starship Troopers at the moment is being reevaluated in pop culture again.
Such a good movie.
Because of the popularity of a video game called Helldivers 2. Which I haven't played, but is really in the zeitgeist at the moment because it.
So you'll play it in 3 years' time and do it in your best of the year game.
Yeah, exactly, in my top two of the year. But people are reevaluating Starship Troopers at the moment, and a lot of people are only just realizing, I guess, the newer Gen Z, that wasn't just a silly bug hunt movie and was saying something about fascism.
Did you watch that for Patreon?
Yes, I think we did.
I think we did as well.
So you can scroll back and listen to that. That's a great movie. But Robocop, yeah, feels really close to the bone in terms of its themes, and there's just a lot more to this movie, and it is just a little gem of a movie. It is so good.
You were saying the sequels, but I haven't seen them.
Yeah, I've seen them. They're not as good as this.
Is it the same director?
I don't know, sorry.
Right at the end, I thought there was going to be like a reconciliation piece between Robocop and his wife. There wasn't, and I think that's right, because like we don't know how much time has passed, but it seems like he was, say, on ice for a long time. Again, how his cognitive function stayed alive makes no sense, but anyway, it seemed like he was on ice for a long time. A lot of time was passing in that kind of montage when he was opening and closing his eyes. Somebody says his wife has moved on, I think kind of implying she might have a new husband. So to be honest, if you died and I'd moved cities and I'd remarried and then you showed up as a Robocop, I just don't feel like I'd want that reconciliation. No, I just think I'd be like, Dave, I'm very happy for you with your new life.
Well, I think it's more interesting that they kind of don't explore that.
I think so too, and I'm glad they didn't, because it would have been too weird. It would have been a sad ending.
It would have been a little hokey. Well, then you've kind of got to send to the movie around that. Although from my dim memory of the 2014 remake with Joel.
Oh, I forgot they
Kinnaman.
did that.
Yeah.
Oh my God, we must watch that. Love Joel Kinnaman.
Well, we did watch it
did we?
many years ago. Yeah. We've seen it. You don't remember? It was before we started this podcast. We watched it. We watched it at home. Yeah, we did.
I can't believe I didn't remember Joel Kinnaman.
Well, this is kind of. That was kind of one of his big breakout roles.
Right.
Like,
Okay.
I don't think that was before even House of Cards or any of those things. So he, I think our memories of that movie was that we actually thought it was okay. I mean, it's not a patch on this.
I like
and
you
it's
trying to remember
those,
our opinions of a movie.
I kind of half remember thinking it was okay. I watched the
10 years
trailer
ago.
for it again just now, and one thing that did stand out to me is that they do exactly what you're describing. His wife is a character and is more involved, and she's, even in the trailer, she is she's being consulted by Gary Oldman, who is the head of the Omnicorp program, the scientist kind of type, and she's being consulted for her consent to use his body, which is actually much a different play to this. Whereas
this is like you signed away your rights the moment you became a cop.
Which I think is far more dystopian and interesting,
I think so too.
and that's kind of what
it's
we're.
worse if you're like, if someone, like, it's one thing if you signed away your own rights to that. If somebody came to me and said, "No, we don't want him to donate his body to science. We want him to donate it to law enforcement," I'd be like, do you know what? You're grand. Like,
but when you think of like, exactly.
I would not sign that for you unless maybe they offer her loads of money. We don't remember. We're talking about a movie we can't really remember.
But it's actually more interesting. It's more interesting in this to have your, and it is a realistic commentary of something that we're facing nowadays, even in Hollywood, where actors' image rights are being taken post-mortem. Right?
Yeah, it's so sick.
Without their consent, and then they're being turned into holographic representations of themselves. Like that's dystopian.
And even I think this is dystopian. Like, so lots of your listeners know my mother is an amateur actor, and she was showing me this like casting call that came out for an actor in an ad, right? And there was like television rights for 1 year, which it would be very standard. But then it was social media rights in perpetuity, like forever. So you make one ad, and that's owned forever.
That's bullshit.
Whereas like that would have never happened under unionization and TV and film and all that kind of stuff. And it's also like Dave, actually, when he was starting our YouTube cinema channel, plug, to kind of create the YouTube account, which you must all go and subscribe to, Dave had to like do facial recognition, and then YouTube was casually like, "Oh, do you mind if we use your face to train AI?"
Yeah.
To which obviously Dave clicked no.
It's like no,
but like,
no, and obviously the box is there ticked already.
Exactly.
It's like untick this if you don't want your face to be.
Digitally, we're all signing away stuff constantly. We all click yes. We don't read anything. So yeah, I think this sounds.
So that's why the idea of, firstly, a corporation, like a privately run privately run public services is something that has been occurring in the UK, for instance, for a long time, and I think we're now only coming to terms with, in Thatcher era, the trains. The train and the Labour did it as well. And Tony Blair, train services,
it's an issue in the Irish healthcare
privatisation.
system. It's kind of half private, half public.
So we're now, and they're trying to do it in the UK, dismantle the NHS and privatise it. And so I think a police force run by a corporation is a fascinating concept that is no longer far-fetched or science fiction, and them using contracts for nefarious purposes and co-opting people is just like, it's really, this is the world we're living in. So yeah, Robocop.
So this is actually a documentary.
Surprisingly profound. But also, like all Verhoeven's work in this space, just so goddamn entertaining, right?
So good. And I think Murphy, the actor who plays Murphy, I can't say I know him.
Peter Weller.
He's very good in the role.
Well, I've got so much good stuff to get into in fun facts. So before we do that, I want to read out some comments from you guys. So Scotty Thompson said, Robocop is one of these films that I'd not usually think to chuck on because I think I'm so familiar with it. I can easily imagine most of the story beats and vividly recall several scenes. I rewatched it last night, however, and was so glad I did. So much nuance, satire, horror and hilarity. Loads of bits I'd forgotten or potentially blocked out due to the trauma of seeing it as a child. It's a masterpiece, really. Truly original. Thanks, Scotty. Adam Morris said, I don't remember exactly how old I was when I first saw it, probably 10, 11 or 12. It hasn't affected me one bit though, although I have...
It made me the man I am today.
He said, this is good. Adam says, although I have just been fired by my tech company for designing a cyborg receptionist who, if you forget your pass, murders you on the spot.
I love when the broken cop thing is like, you must disarm. If you do not disarm in 20 seconds, I will kill you.
30 seconds. You have 30 seconds
Already
to comply.
I'm like, okay, but even if you were trying to disarm and like you had an issue and you'd crutches or whatever issue where you're like, you struggle to put it down, that's a psychotic time limit.
Yeah, right. There's not much room for nuance.
And the thing is like, I will kill you if you don't. It's not like, I'll shoot you in the knees and you fall over. It's like, you're dead now.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think even police are allowed to
it's
do
almost
that.
comical, the amount of bullets that go into that executive.
I'm sorry, Murphy should not be alive. We forgot to talk about that. Murphy dies, is fully dead.
Well, here's an early...
And he's all slashed up and his face is slashed up and everything, and then he arrives in the operating table and he looks basically fine.
Here's an early fun fact. So Paul Verhoeven deliberately extended that death scene and made it even more traumatic and horrific by design, and a lot of you said in the comments that traumatized you as a child, and that was a deliberate choice because he realized that we spend so little time with Murphy as a human that you need this scene to anchor you to him.
Yeah, because otherwise he's just a guy who's like, I like fast cars and I like to swing guns around.
Exactly.
Like, he has no personality.
Exactly. So that traumatic death scene really forces you to empathize with
That's
it.
fascinating.
Graham wrote a fantastic but very long message, which I'm not going to read all out here, but I encourage you all to look at it in the comments section. He says, I have lots of memories about this because I was blown away by how good I thought it was, but I was actually old enough to watch it. Vague recollection, but when it came out at the cinema, I think it was rated M, but then it came out on VHS later in the year as R. So when it came out in the cinema, it was promoted as that sort of action movie I don't bother with, so I didn't. I only learned later that it was actually a sci-fi partial dystopia, which is my bag. And coincidentally, when
partial dystopia. Graham.
Full on dystopia, man. Coincidentally, when I did get to rent it on VHS, I rented The Terminator at the same time.
Nice.
I had also not bothered with The Terminator because it was promoted as an Arnie action rather than sci-fi noir. Imagine getting those two. Imagine getting The Terminator and Robocop out on VHS at the same time.
Best night of your life.
Graham, I love it. Kevin Matthews said, I wasn't that young when I saw it, but I was definitely young.
There's a very male perspective here. I feel like it's a movie a lot of young men watched.
Yes, I think so.
I mean, it would have been marketed with the...
And as Kevin's about to point out, actually, I'll read his comment. And he said, it's been nice to grow up with it, though, and get more from it with every rewatch, from the glorious score to the wonderful, if varied, practical effects. And the Spectrum 48K game was absolutely brilliant, whether it was the sideways scrolling and shooting sections, the photo fit game, or attempting to shoot a hostage taker in his nether regions. Happy memories. So, what Kevin's referring to there is it had a long life as a video game, as a franchise outside of the movie, and it was also a popular Saturday morning kids TV show.
Of course it was.
Which is why a lot of parents probably let their children watch the movie mistakenly.
We were talking about this before with like Beetlejuice and Ghostbusters as well. Movies that aren't like kids' movies kind of got backdoor pilots.
Yeah, right.
through the TV. I guess because there wasn't that many people making stuff then. So they just... Do you know what I mean? They're just like, we'll just remake something we already have and make it for kids.
I can actually see like I can see why this could be transferred to a kids' TV show as a concept.
So violent though, even the concept itself. Is
but if you strip all that out, just the idea of a robot cop.
Yeah, but you still have the undercurrent that it's a man's brain inside it.
Yeah, I know, right?
So gross.
I'm sure the TV show didn't deal into any of the existential dread that Murphy faces. Maybe it was every week in week out it was just Murphy looking in the mirror and saying, "Who am I?"
You stole my family from me.
Stephen KT says, "I've looked and it appears to have been released on VHS in the UK in November 1988. I was born in December 1974 and reckon I'd have seen it at or close to VHS release, so I reckon I was 13 going on 14. I loved
like this
it.
mental arithmetic.
Yeah, good work. Well, I asked everyone to let us know what age they were when they first saw it. Stephen says, loved it. The violence was stellar and I was exactly the right age to be blown away by it. I haven't seen it for years, but could vividly remember 3 scenes. 1, Murphy's death. 2, Ed 209 blowing away the first guy in the office.
Never forget Ed 209.
3, Romano off of ER melting from a toxic waste snafu. Wonderful stuff, I think.
Romano off of ER?
Do you remember the guy who falls into the toxic waste and then gets run over by the car? Yeah, he's from ER.
Oh, I didn't recognise him.
He says, wonderful stuff, though I think my parents thought it a little OTT.
Yeah,
and a couple more comments. Richard G. Laird says, like I imagine most of us, I saw this really young in the mid-90s. I think I was 9 or 10, mainly because there was a cartoon, so my parents assumed it was family friendly. Murphy's death is still one of the most horrific things I saw. I had nightmares about it. And I also had loads of the toys from the cartoon. Still love the flick. And lastly, Brona says...
Finally, Brona, thank you for adding a female voice.
She says it's a masterful satire. I saw it as a teenager, maybe around 14, and I thought it was the most grotesque thing I've ever seen. I appreciated the humour much more as an adult. I think that's the thing about these movies, is that the black humour running throughout it and the satirical vein.
It's interesting how a movie like this you appreciate more layers as you get older.
Yeah,
then a movie like The Wedding Singer, you're like, this?
That's exactly what maybe The Wedding Singer is a stark social commentary on
how everyone in society
traditional
should be thin.
heteronormative relationships.
No, it's a stark reminder that everyone in the world should be thin and hetero.
Yeah, that's it.
That's all that film's telling us.
So, thank you all so much for the comments. We are going to take a quick break and then we're going to come back and I'm going to hit Kathy with about 100 fun facts, and
she's going to dazzle me.
She's going to be like Murphy when he's having that dream. And her arms will be going like this. Like, oh, it's perfect. She'll be hit with so many fun facts.
Did you watch that 4-part documentary you were telling me about?
No, I'm so disappointed. So I was hoping to, before the time of recording, watch the 4-part series Robodoc.
Which is like phenomenal name.
Which is so good.
Outstanding.
And I was not able to acquire it. There seems to be no way to watch it in Ireland.
I mean, I'm sure you could buy it on eBay or something.
Yeah, it does seem to be available on Blu-ray, but I couldn't get to it in time. But there are clips of it on YouTube, and in fact, there is one fantastic story from it about Peter Weller and Oreos, which I'm actually going to download the audio from that and use that as the segue to the fun facts. So here is a short clip from the Robodoc series, the 4-part series exploring the behind the scenes of Robocop, and you're going to hear from the I forget the guy's name, but I'll call him out on the other side. He's the weapons master. He was the weapons master on the movie Robocop.
Busy man on that movie.
He's describing. He's the first voice you'll hear. He's describing an interaction he had with Peter Weller that involves Oreos, and you'll also hear Peter Weller's response in this. And also, just as a tee up to this, Peter Weller, for context, for some reason decided to do method acting on this movie and insisted on being either called Murphy or Robo at all times.
Do you know being called the character's name is not method acting? Method acting is having your brain removed from your dead body and getting put into a machine, okay? So don't tell me that calling himself Murphy is method acting.
Very good. Okay. So here's that clip, and we'll see you in a minute.
When we were in Monessen, Pennsylvania shooting the steel mill, Peter's upstairs. We were up 2 or 3 floors. You had to go upstairs to get to him. We had an explosion behind him. We make the explosion hot. We're ready to go. I went upstairs and I was carrying, I don't know, about 8 Oreos in a stack. I'd hand him his weapon. I'd say, Peter, safety's off. And he wouldn't take the pistol. And he says, Robo wants an Oreo. And I looked at him and go, no, it's just you and I, Peter. Robo doesn't get an Oreo. If Peter wants an Oreo, Peter can have an Oreo. And he clip-clops in the suit over to the edge of the railing, and Peter starts bellowing, Robo wants an Oreo. And when the steel mill just echoes, Randy has Oreos, or Robo wants an Oreo. And Steve Lim over the radio goes, Randy, do you have Oreos? So I stuffed that whole stack in my mouth and then crunched them and let them fall down 3 stories onto everybody below me. And not anymore. And Robo got upset.
I haven't got a damn clue about Randy Moore and his fucking Oreos. Randy Moore's a friend, but half the time I don't know what the hell he's talking about. So he's got all these stories from Robocop. I don't remember them.
Steve Lim's going, can we get the shot and then Robo can have an Oreo? And Peter said no. So they had to cut. They were rolling, they're ready to go. Now we're hot on the explosive. They had to send a PA up the stairs. They feed him an Oreo, and now he's got Oreo in his teeth. So then the PA has to pick the Oreos out of his teeth. And then he says, okay, I'm ready. And then we shot it. So after that, Peter would always say, Robo wants an Oreo. So I had a gentleman that worked with me. And his official title, it should have been the Peter Feeder, because that's what the crew called him, as the Peter Feeder, because for some reason, weapons had to feed Peter Oreos.
Randy, love you madly. Don't believe one fucking word out of your mouth, bro.
And there you have it. Robo wants an Oreo. That clip makes me want to see that documentary even more. I'm going to hunt it down, and I'm sure it's a good. And actually, you should look it up on YouTube, guys, because there's some clips of it, and they animated that whole exchange.
Put it in the show
notes. They put a lot of work into it. Yeah, I'll put a link to it in the show notes. Right, Kathy, fun facts
I'm
time.
here, I'm ready.
Are you ready to have fun?
I'm waiting.
Let's go.
It's completely overegged.
Some good ones. Yeah, I may have built this up too much. However, right, I'm going to set the table a little bit with the backdrop to how Robocop came about. So Robocop is the baby of Edward Neumeier, a screenwriter. This was his debut first script that he got developed. He was a former journalist, then working as a junior executive and script reader in the various studios, so Columbia, Warner Brothers, I think, etc. So he gets behind the scenes on the set of Blade Runner in 1982, and this is where he suddenly gets this vision for Robocop, because he was
Okay, so pre-Terminator then.
Yes, Terminator is going to come up. 2 years before Terminator, he's on the set of Blade Runner, and he said in an interview, I had this vision of a far distant Blade Runner type world where there was an all mechanical cop coming to a sense of real human intelligence. That was the genesis and the germ of this idea. So then he develops it with another screenwriter and a wannabe director, Michael Miner, who was a co-writer on this, and they developed it in their own time, kind of for fun, in evenings and weekends, outside of their day jobs, right? And they had to learn, they didn't know each other. I don't know, it was like one of those professional relationships that they just developed, and they liked the idea. So they had to learn how to work together, criticize each other, and it was a bit challenging. But they started shopping the script around, and it starts to pick up some steam. They get a few offers. And Orion Pictures, which there's another brilliant documentary about, who did a lot of schlocky, crazy movies in the 80s and no longer exists, they pick it up. Then they start shopping it around to many different directors around Hollywood, including probably the most famous I recognize was David Cronenberg. And Paul Verhoeven also rejected it. He rejected it twice.
Wow.
Because he's English is not his native language, and he didn't get its satirical tone.
and his wife convinced him to take it after on the third time. He said
I mean, I guess if you just read the script, you could be like, Jesus, this is awful. This robot killed this poor businessman. Like, if it's not done in a funny way, it could be really serious.
Maybe. But I would I'm sure those news clips were written into the script. Like, I mean, I don't know. So he didn't quite get the tone, and his wife convinces him, because she reads it, and she says, this is about a man having an identity crisis. And this is interesting. She convinces him that there's something more to it. And the scene that sort of convinced him was the scene where Robocop revisits his home as the sort of clincher for the sort of humanity within.
We didn't talk how weird it was when he visited his home.
Well, it's a scene that's always stuck with me. I remember it very vividly, and it is the most human and emotional scene in the movie. However, it is very schlocky.
It's the way it keeps flashing back and forth. It's really hokey.
Hokey, that's the word for it. Because the actors they cast and the way they shot it and what the actors are saying, it's basically like watching God, what is it? It's just like the
Home and Away.
Home and Away level. It's like soap opera. Oh my God, honey!
The Bold and the Beautiful.
It's just like this ridiculous idealized version of a family.
Yeah.
Like it's pretty pathetic.
But look, in fairness, let Murphy have his dreams.
But the idea of this person going to this home, and then the concept, I think, of flashing forward between this human/robot's memories and
that is interesting.
It is interesting.
And the real estate agent just like, hi, welcome to the
That's
room.
quite interesting. That's sort of
really
Back to the Future style. Yeah.
And now real estate agents don't even have to show you a place. You just have to pay for it before you've ever seen it.
Right. So Verhoeven agrees to meet the two writers. He agrees to come on board, but
he's like, for the third time you send me your script, I'll come and meet you.
But it's not that easy, right? Yeah. Oh, you know, right? So, but he sits down with the two of them, Edward Neumeier and Michael Miner, and they can't quite agree on the tone, right? Edward Neumeier was big into adult comic books, right? And he brings them to Verhoeven, and he says, "This is the tone I want. Judge Dredd, 2000 AD, this kind of like over stylized comic book gore, the thing that it becomes." But Verhoeven's like, no, I want to make this as a serious film. I'm a serious
This is his. He's not made him in the film before, has he?
No, Verhoeven has, but he's not famous for it. He's not in English.
He's not
language.
moved into his
genre
yet.
I don't remember where he's from. I should look that up. I think he's Dutch. So he asks them to make a lot of changes. He wants to make a serious film, right? Mm-hmm. So Edward Neumeier and Michael Miner go off, and they take all these notes, and they write from Paul Verhoeven, and they write a third draft based on all his requests, which included a romantic subplot between Lewis, his partner, and Murphy, right?
I mean, it's funny, I felt like the movie was just purely because whenever you have a male and a female lead, it ends up being romantic. Like, at no point would I have been surprised if that had happened.
Well, I'm glad that's not in the movie, because
I meant to say I really liked her.
Weird and distracting.
I thought she was really good.
She's great. Yeah, I'll talk about her.
And we were watching it saying, God, she's just like a normal looking woman in the film.
Yeah, and she's actually a really good actor.
She's really good. Yeah.
So they rewrite that. This is the third draft. They bring it back to Paul Verhoeven, and then he reads it and admits he was wrong. They went back to the second draft, and they went back to the comic book tone, which we got. Right, here's some actors that they shopped this around to for the Murphy role.
I think as an actor though, like, it's not that attractive a role compared to like a Terminator, because most of the role you're not visible.
You're not. That's exactly
make
right.
A star of you.
That's exactly why it got turned down by so many people.
Yeah.
Apparently nobody wanted to do it.
And then for the one scene you are doing,
your face is not on display.
The few scenes you're doing, you've just spent 20 hours in makeup.
Oh, it's horrific, and I'll tell you in a minute.
Whereas Terminator,
Peter Weller had an awful time. So these people were probably right to turn this down. Michael Ironside turned it down, who did later star in Edward Neumeier and Paul Verhoeven's Starship Troopers.
Yeah,
he was in that as one of the drill sergeants. Rutger Hauer from Blade Runner was offered the part. Tom Berenger.
What's he from?
He was big in the 70s and 80s. He was in Sniper, Major League. What else? They're all screaming.
This is a podcast. I'm just saying I'd know him if I saw him.
You'd know him. He's a very famous big mustache from memory.
Okay.
James Remar, who you probably won't recognize the name, but as soon as I tell you it's Harry from Dexter,
wow, okay.
You'll remember
him.
So of those,
you mean Richard from Sex and the City?
Sure. We're coming at from very different perspectives.
Well, I'm coming from both.
Of those, I think Rutger Hauer would have been a good choice.
All
James
fairly
Remar,
unfamous
maybe.
though. Like they weren't going for big guns.
Not huge. No. This is relatively low budget. But guess who the favorite was? Arnold Schwarzenegger. Yeah, they wanted Arnold Schwarzenegger, who was. So this is 1985, right? No, he's not famous, but he is hot off the success of the Terminator, right?
Oh wait, sorry, he was famous. They couldn't have used him.
He was pretty hot and famous right now, but he just had one move. This could have been his next role.
Yeah, but he'd have been so typecast if he'd gone for this. That'd be crazy.
Yes, and I agree. But they actually had a different fear. They had a fear that he was too big for the suit, and because he's huge.
So they'd only one suit,
and he would look like.
You think it only cast?
No, they hadn't built the suit yet. But if you put, because Peter Weller's a very skinny man.
And this is back in his steroid days, like.
Exactly. So you put Arnold Schwarzenegger in the suit. They thought he was going to look like. This is what it said. They thought he was going to look like the Michelin Man.
He probably would have.
So it might have looked a bit ridiculous.
And he was on peak steroids, which he said in his documentary. It's not us speculating.
Yeah, that's true. So Peter Weller was pretty much the only person who was interested in this. He was, and
it's like when I tried to advertise for a co-host for a podcast and you were the only person. It was like, you got it by default.
It was so awful because Kathy made me sit in on the interviews. So Peter Weller was actually a good choice. He was very fit. He had a lot of martial arts training, so he had good sort of control of his body. And he brought a sci-fi fan base with him because he had starred in Buckaroo Banzai and whatever the rest of that movie title is called.
You lost me at Buckaroo Banzai.
Buckaroo Banzai and the Adventures in the Ninth Dimension, or so it's called something like that. But Paul Verhoeven, the director, said that the most important characteristic was, and quote, he had a good chin.
Great chin.
Which a lot like Batman, you do need a good chin.
I think he's a bit Cillian Murphy-esque, his features.
He is actually. Yeah, he's got that sort of scrawny.
But he's got kind of full lips
angular,
and a good mouth and a chin.
You're right, there is similarities there. Right, so in the pre-production for this movie, Peter Weller then spends months working with a mime. So mimes apparently do get work in Hollywood.
Okay, great.
So he worked with a mime, and he would wear. I couldn't find any footage of this, but I love this picture. He would wear an American football outfit, with the big chest and all that. And he would practice his movements with this mime, right, to get his robotic movements.
I just need to point out another area there where mimes get work, which is where my sister Jackie worked in France. She lives in France, but
the home of the mime.
She always works for the public service, but she briefly worked in the private sector, so they splashed out on a Christmas party for them, and their Christmas lunch was them all having a lunch while there was a mime.
I
that
cannot
they watched.
imagine anything worse. That sounds incredibly
and that was
embarrassing.
her splash out Christmas party, by the way.
Do you remember that movie with Jesse Eisenberg we watched in World War II, where he was a French mime?
I'll never forget it.
And we slated it on the Empire Film Podcast.
But we were nicer about it on the Empire Film Podcast than if we'd have been on our own podcast.
It was terrible.
Anyway, sorry. That sounds amazing. So he's miming around the place in an American football shirt.
I know.
Yeah.
And this is another reason. I hope they footage of that in this 4-part Robodoc. I gotta see it. Nancy Allen, who played his partner, she was not the original choice. They had originally cast an actress called Stephanie Zimbalist, who was most famous for working as Pierce Brosnan's co-star in Remington Steele.
Oh wow! Okay.
But she had to drop out after Remington Steele was brought back or something. There was a contract issue. She went back to Remington Steele, and Nancy Allen came in.
Okay.
Nancy Allen was quite renowned for her long, beautiful blonde hair.
Don't tell me they made her cut it
Paul
off.
Verhoeven made her cut it off because he didn't want her or the character to be sexualized. Because it's
so
the 80s,
you can't be sexy
and
with
you
short
can't
hair.
be sexy with short hair. That's exactly what it said.
It's so funny though, because
even though a lot of women had short hair in the 80s, I don't get
short hair was really common.
I don't know what.
I guess, but they weren't sexual if they didn't have long blonde hair.
I suspect that Paul Verhoeven has a kind of very narrow attitude of sexuality.
Couldn't she not have put it back like in a ponytail? I always maintain if I was an actor or a model or whatever, I would just never mind someone like Cillian Murphy losing loads of weight for a role. I wouldn't even get my hair trimmed for a role.
Apparently it took
I'd refuse.
I didn't write this down, but I read somewhere it took 5 or 6 different cuts to get it right.
To get what right?
To get whatever that is right.
Her hair's completely
whatever
fine.
Lewis's hair was.
Yeah. You'd never have left that and been like, bloody hell, that was an amazing haircut.
She pulls it off though. She's
She
a
looks
really
great.
beautiful
Yeah,
woman.
she looks great.
And a
I'm
great
just so
actor.
glad she didn't have the long blonde hair. It would have been so wrong for the role.
It just would have been so distracting how sexy she would have been. Robo want sex with partner.
Murphy, love you.
She undertook police training for this
Why,
role
like-
for some reason.
Actors need to calm down.
I know, right? And she consulted with her father, who was actually a police officer. But she,
consulted with her father or just said, "Hi, Dad."
Hey, Dad, I'm playing this cop. What should I do? He said, I don't know.
He said, "Cut your fucking hair off."
Just tell them they have 30 seconds to comply, and then shoot them if they don't. But I gotta say, I mean, she's really convincing as a cop in this movie. So she does. I don't know, whatever
Training
work
it up.
she did. Yeah,
She's much
paid
more
off.
convincing than Murphy is.
You don't believe him as a Robocop.
No.
She, by the way, I don't know if I gushed enough earlier, but that costume is so good. Like, I just love it.
It's fab.
Michael Ironside was also offered the Clarence Boddicker role, played by Kurtwood Smith, the
Dad from the
villain
70s
with
show.
the glasses.
Who's very good in this.
Who is great in this, and he apparently that character was based on Heinrich Himmler, very prominent Nazi Party leader, who is regarded as the architect of the Holocaust. Yes.
What? The character or the look of the character?
The look of the character
Oh, right, okay.
was modelled
So
on him in
interesting.
terms of sort of
Weird
glasses and scrawny and just absolute pure
I guess that's
pure
interesting because
evil.
Paul Verhoeven has a kind of Nazi aesthetic in Stormtroopers as well. Some of the stuff.
Yes,
so
true,
I guess he's
true, yeah.
interested in that visually.
Although I'm not sure how much of that is on the page and coming from Ed Neumeyer.
Yeah, it's a bit unnecessary anyway because honestly he just looks like any villain. in
Well,
any
it turns
movie
out
ever.
Kurtwood Smith wasn't aware of this at any
Right.
point.
Yeah.
Found out afterwards.
He just looks like himself.
yeah.
Because I've never seen him play a villain, so that was interesting too.
He's fantastic.
In my head, he's just the
so,
dad.
so good.
Yeah, he's just the dad from that 70s show.
But I can't remember. Apologies. Somebody in our it might have been Graham actually pointed this out, or Stephen KT in our comments spoke about Kurtwood Smith the year after this played like a disappointed father in a different movie brilliantly, and it's just and whoever made that comment said that's called range.
Yeah.
He's a fantastic actor. Right, where was I? So Paul Verhoeven actually come back to Blade Runner. Wanted to get Lawrence G. Paul, the production designer of Blade Runner, an absolute legend. Like Blade Runner has one of the most incredible production design in cinema history. He wants him in to create this world. But the producer, one of Paul Verhoeven's Robocop's producers, said to Paul, "You can have a great production designer, or you can have a great Robocop costume, but we can't afford both." And so he went with the costume.
Right.
And you can see the money again on that costume. It's so good. But the costume it was behind schedule, right? So it wasn't finished and completed until well into shooting had actually begun. Which didn't...
So they must have shot it sequentially then.
Well, no, they didn't. Well, perhaps, but there's a lot of scenes that he's not in as well. So you've got all the Omnicorp stuff. But it apparently didn't affect their shooting schedule. But what it did mean is that Peter Weller didn't get the 1 month of rehearsals that he had been promised in the suit.
What does he need? He wore a quarterback shirt and he did a mime lesson.
Well, this is apparently what happened. So once he got into the costume, none of the moves that he had practiced with the mime worked because it was really bulky and awful. He couldn't see through the visor, so he couldn't pick stuff up with the gloves. There was apparently, that shot where he's leaving for the first time, and then somebody says he's gonna need a car, and then the police chief just throws him the keys, and he catches it in midair. That shot was the hardest shot in the film to get, because just him catching keys in the air, because he couldn't see through the visor.
Just zoom in on the hand?
And he had the gloves, which were too hard to coordinate.
Why didn't he just zoom in on the glove catching it?
So apparently it took a whole day, and Peter Weller
But that's crazy.
was furious.
But the magic of cinema is you just cut in on the hand catching the keys. You do
they
not
didn't.
need
They
the
wanted
shot.
the full
and I
body.
don't recall
They wanted
that
the
shot.
full body shot.
I
It's
don't
in it.
recall
It's in the movie. They got the shot, but it took a day. He could. So it was also like crazy hot. They didn't film this in much moderately temperatured Detroit, where it's set. It was filmed in Dallas, in Texas. So it was roasting hot. he was so hot and he was sweating so much he was losing like up to 3 pounds a day apparently.
What?
Yeah, and he's already
3
a
pounds
skinny
a day.
guy.
So you're telling me he lost 21 pounds a week?
Well, apparently he must have been
The weight
piling
of
it
one
back
of our
on.
children.
That's what it
That
said.
can't be right.
That's what it said. He was losing up to 3 pounds a day. You can verify this from the Robocop documentary. I feel like we need to do a follow-up. So Peter Weller is furious, and apparently he was a nightmare on set. Really hard to work with. Didn't handle any of this well. He also, imagine he's doing all this while insisting on being called Robo. And
Oh my
staying
God,
in
I
costume.
forgot he was a method actor.
So it just sounds like a complete disaster. So he gets fired during the shoot. Paul Verhoeven fires Peter Weller, and they're kind of re-scrambling, knowing what to do. They start to look at
Okay, that
replacements.
must have been really bad to fire the lead actor mid-movie.
Yeah, really bad. If this doesn't make you want to watch the 4-part Robodoc documentary. So they consider replacing him. Lance Hendrickson was considered, which I think is a great choice because
Who's Lance Hendrickson?
he's a man who looks exactly like Peter Weller.
Who?
He was in Aliens as the android. So which came out,
You lost me at Aliens.
I think, the year before this.
Right.
That's probably why they wanted him. He would have been a great choice. Not quite as good at Chin. But it didn't work out. But the problem was the suit had been specifically designed for Peter Weller's dimensions, right? So the producers just urged Paul Verhoeven to mend bridges with him, and they managed to bring Peter Weller back. And him and Peter Weller and the mime. This mime is getting paid so much.
mime?
He's still going. This mime.
But is he the mime who trained Jesse Eisenberg? Because I can't forgive him. It's unforgivable.
So this mime is still around, and the mime and Peter Weller go off, and they develop a slower, more deliberate movement style to match the bulky new suit, which is a great style. It looks brilliant.
It's a great idea.
It's a
They
great
probably didn't
performance.
need to sack him and rehire him to just figure this idea out.
Well, it sounds like he was a nightmare to work with, but I'm sure there's a lot of like reasons. He had awful working conditions, right?
I mean, if
it
I
sounds
spent
like
a
an
whole day
awful
catching
shoot.
a set of keys.
It sounds like an awful shoot, yeah. So that was the worst day apparently. But even Paul Verhoeven was having an awful time. He apparently began taking prescription medication to help with stress-induced insomnia, and he was and ended up filming a lot of the movie under the influence of heavy medication.
Oh my God.
So he had an awful time as well. It goes to the censors then, they complete it, and the extreme violence was unsurprisingly a massive issue with the censors, in particular Murphy's death scene and the Ed 209 were shortened significantly for the cinema cut, and as
Because
Graham
they didn't want it to
spoke
be
about,
R-rated.
yeah, exactly. So there was an M version and an R version and all those kind of things, right? Then also the scenes were also they put in those news break scenes, you know, those news clips. They put them right after deliberately or in and around those gruesome scenes to try and balance the tone a bit.
Yeah, that works
But
well,
apparently
actually.
one reviewer found that so jarring that they had complained to the projectionist that they were playing the reels in the wrong order.
Oh God.
Right, the movie comes out, it makes $53 million. It was a modest success. It was 1987's 14th highest grossing film behind Crocodile Dundee.
Wait, we were just talking. Oh no, I was just re-listening to our old Beetlejuice review because we put it on our main feed, and we were talking about Crocodile Dundee 2 was in the charts.
Yeah, apparently that
against
film was a big hit. Well, the 13th highest grossing film. But I think this film gets more legs on VHS and yeah, which makes sense, right? Great word of mouth. I'll close out with a few fun facts. The Ed 209 scene, which we spoke about, where
Best scene in the movie.
where he murders the gruesomely murders one of the
And he's
execs.
like stopgap animation or motion. Isn't
That's
he?
right, motion, yeah, stop motion. Yeah.
Yeah.
That was conceived by writer Edward Neumeier when he was often working as an executive in the studio, and he would just, I relate to this so hard, would spend like hours in these boring meetings, and he would fantasize about a robot coming in and killing everyone.
Wait, you relate to that, or you relate to the boring meeting?
I relate to the boring meetings. No, I don't fantasize about robots coming in and killing everyone. Although now it'll be on my mind. The connection between the plot connection between the characters Clarence Boddicker and the evil OCP guy, you know, that he's his henchman, the twist in the middle, that wasn't actually in the original script, and it was suggested by Orion studio executives.
It was a good twist.
I agree.
Yeah.
And I was going to say, I think it's a great example of, everyone
Good
likes
notes.
to SHIT on studio execs
Yeah.
and notes, but that's a good note.
I think so too. I think it enhanced the movie.
I agree.
Because otherwise there's not much plot. It's like he's a Robocop and then what?
Yeah, and it tied everything together really
Yeah.
well. I think it was really good. Television host, the television host that appears frequently throughout this, called Bigsby Snyder. I'd buy that for $1, you know, that guy. He was written, conceived by Edward Neumeier as an American Benny Hill.
Right.
Which I can kind of
So
see.
pointless.
It
was just distracting whenever he came on.
This is a good one. I think it's supposed to be expressing the absolute like lowbrow state of dystopian future television, which also we are heading towards.
Heading towards.
Yeah, I mean we have headed. We're here. Yeah, there are shows called MILF Island, shows that were parodied 10 years ago by 30 Rock. They exist now. Right, this is a good one. When they were blowing up storefronts, would you remember when they get those big artillery guns and they start blowing up stores, all the villains? One of those controlled explosions went off too big and affected the actors. Kurtwood Smith's coat caught on fire and they all got blown back. And
such an 80s thing that villains do over the top stuff like that, isn't it? It was making me think of like Demolition Man and movies like that. Like,
yeah, it's very ridiculous. And there are always these outrageous characters. There's always one like loudmouth who's like, ha, the guy with the laughter.
Yeah.
Like they're all really annoying. But because that happened, all the actors involved were given bonus stunt pay as stunt actors. Because they had to,
I mean,
so
if
they
I
were
got
given
set on fire,
they were given $400 each because of that explosion.
$400 for your coat to go on fire.
Well, in 1987, $400 times X amount of people probably added to their budget quite a lot. Lastly, last fun fact: there is this is a great story. In 2011, the at the time Detroit mayor called Dave Bing went on Twitter. With the city commissioner to say, ask us, anything you want about the city, the citizens of Detroit, and he gets in an exchange with an anonymous user on Twitter who suggests that Detroit should have a statue of Robocop to rival Philadelphia's statue of Rocky, because he thinks that Robocop is better than Rocky. The mayor replies that there are no plans to erect a statue of Robocop in the city. But this exchange went viral and ended up on Reddit. And then somebody launched a Kickstarter campaign which raised $67,000 to make a statue of Robocop, which got commissioned and has been delayed over the 10 years, but was complete because sadly the artist that was making it became ill. But the statue has been completed a few years ago. And is currently sitting in storage at an undisclosed location, but there are apparently plans to install it somewhere in 2024 in Detroit.
Wow, that's an incredible fun fact. Thank you, Dave.
Thank you.
Above and beyond there. That was amazing.
Thanks for listening.
Thanks
now we all
listening.
need to go and watch the RoboDoc documentary and report back here.
You need to go into the Patreon chat function and suggest themes for next month. And thank you again for this one, Anna. It was awesome.
Yes, thanks. Yeah, a fantastic suggestion that was by Anna Wilczek on movies that you saw when you were too young. We do have a lot of other great suggestions, but we need more. So yeah, pop them in on the chat or under this comment thread, and yeah, see you in the comments.
Bye.
Bye.
Robocop, the future of law enforcement.
Unexplored catacombs buried beneath the city. A crumbling castle perched on a mountain peak. A top-secret government bunker. A cursed mansion cloaked in legend. I'm Sasha Auerbach. Join me and Tom Ward every Wednesday and Sunday as we reveal the mysteries and histories of abandoned places around the world and ask, where did everyone go? Brought to you by Like a Shot, makers of Forbidden History. Search for Where Did Everyone Go on your favorite podcast platform.